I'll now give the floor to Mr. Karim Khan for his briefing. You have the floor.
Madam President and distinguished delegates, it is indeed an honour to be able to present the third report of the United Nations investigative team to promote accountability for the crimes committed by Daesh, the so-called Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. Since my last briefing to the Council, the investigative team has worked with some purpose and continued to ensure that the experiences and needs of the survivors of ISIL crimes and their families and victims are placed at the centre of our work, not simply lip service, but by demonstrable action of members of the team. All communities, Madam President, whether Shabak, Kaka'i, Shia, Sunni, Christian, Turkmen or Yezidi, have suffered unbelievable brutality and cruelty of the most un-Islamic state called Daesh. And it is, of course, essential that their voices and their experiences are listened to as we conduct our investigations to build credible cases to ensure accountability. In the past 6 months since my last report, I have visited and met with tribal leaders throughout Iraq, family members and survivors, not only in Baghdad, but in Erbil, in Tel Afar, in Mosul, in the Nineveh Plains, and in Diyala and Nineveh, and elsewhere in Iraq, to ensure that those accounts are preserved, that they're taken, and that also that the interaction by the investigative team can be as informed as possible to understand the experiences of the victims and witnesses and to ensure proper investigations. Last week, I visited 2 displacement camps in Duhok, and I saw women that had suffered awful slavery and sexual abuse, and children, as well as men, living with dignity in really the very difficult conditions. So the effects of Daesh are not finished. Not only are the crimes endured, but the aftermath is something that the communities are grappling to cope with. And their courage really gives one pause for thought, because in that engagement with us to speak and relive hell on earth, which is what they experienced, they do so with such engagement and such willingness that it really puts into very sharp relief the heavy responsibility that is upon all of us to ensure that their cries, their tears, their suffering are met with purposeful action and credible investigations. And Madam President, it is, of course, the responsibility of all of us, this Council as well as myself and the team, to ensure that not only are words spoken, but we have the stamina, collective stamina and collective focus to make sure proper investigations and accountability is realised in practice. As reflected in the report that I have submitted, the investigative team has sought to draw on this imperative for urgent action in the delivery of its mandate. 1 year after our deployment to Iraq, I am pleased to inform the Council that the team is now fully operational. We had about 5 members of staff when we first deployed in Iraq. We now have 107 members. And I'm delighted that as we've grown, we have managed to maintain a good gender balance. 53% of our substantive and support staff are women, and more than 50% of our senior leadership are women. And at the same time, I'm glad to say that the geographical diversity has been met, and all regional groups of the United Nations continue to be represented by the team. The establishment of this core infrastructure has provided a basis for significant progress in the collection and gathering and analysis of digital testimonial and forensic evidence with respect to the three core areas that I adumbrated in the previous report, namely crimes in Mosul, crimes in Sinjar, and crimes in Speicher at Tikrit Air Cadet Academy. Whilst at the same time, we have ensured that we have a quick responsibility to meet meaningfully with the requests that we have received from third states and other domestic courts. Using the trust fund, we have also ensured that we have expanded the scope of investigations to make sure that all the diverse communities, regardless of race or religion or tribe or ethnic origin, all of those that were targeted by Daesh will have investigations focusing on the crimes that they endured to ensure criminal responsibility based upon evidence. The breadth of the fieldwork conducted by the team in this reporting period has been reflected in key evidence collection activities even in recent weeks. We've managed, for example, to complete 3D laser scanning of crime scenes that will help bring scenes that may be known in Iraq or unknown in third countries to life by way of modern technology. And it's also a very useful aid when one is speaking to a witness, that they can, without going into areas that may still be dangerous and traumatic, they can actually position themselves in this 3D modeling in a way that will bring clarity to their accounts and hopefully assist domestic courts in assessing criminal responsibility. We've continued to collect evidence and interview witnesses, including witnesses that have endured sexual and gender-based violence and rapes, slavery, as well as other witnesses from Duhok and elsewhere. And we've managed to do that with full respect, as you required of us, of international standards by way of our witness protection unit and our clinical psychologists that we have recruited with the kind assistance of the Netherlands. The successful use of social media has also been garnered together, and we've used some of the social media to put forward the photographs of individuals that appear in the Daesh propaganda videos and elsewhere. And we've had thousands of responses that help us identify the names of these protagonists that will further inform the investigations of the team. And we have also worked hand in glove with the Iraqi domestic authorities to continue to gather DNA samples from the remains of mass grave sites so that hopefully we can build cases and also identify the remains and return those remains together with the Mass Graves Directorate of Iraq to their loved ones for burial in accordance with their religious and cultural practices. As I address the Council today, at this moment, we have two field-based missions that are actively conducting investigation in the Nineveh Governorate. They're investigating, in fact, at this moment, crimes that particularly targeted judges, religious clergy, journalists, and healthcare professionals, because we see amongst many other aspects that Daesh seems to have targeted some of the leaders, some of the informers of Mosul when they strangled that city and then suffocated it when they took over completely. Based upon these activities, the investigative team has identified a number of individual ISIL members as primary targets for further investigations in relation to each of the areas that we have previously identified, the three investigative priorities detailed in the last report. For example, just in relation to the Yezidi community alone, the crimes that targeted them, we have identified over 160 perpetrators of massacres against the Yezidis, particularly in Kojo and elsewhere, and we're focusing our work to build solid cases, hopefully, in relation to each of those that may be presented to domestic courts. Iraq, of course, is the primary intended recipients, but any courts that are willing and able to hold Daesh members accountable. So, Madam President and distinguished delegates, the progress achieved by the team in the last 6 months has continued to build on our relationship of mutual support and collaboration with the national authorities of Iraq, and their support and assistance has been exemplary. I used that word in my second report when I had the honour of briefing the Council, and I'm glad to say that that has continued to be the case. Without the support of the government of Iraq, their real meaningful assistance, this hope, this prayer for justice would fall on fallow ground, and only by this hand walking step by step can we achieve on the promise of justice that we all wish to see. Since the last report, we have conducted 203, in the last 6 months, 203 field-based investigative activities with the direct support of the Iraqi authorities. These missions are planned and facilitated with the support of the National Operations Centre that sits inside the Prime Minister's office. And once again, without that support, we simply couldn't move outside of Baghdad, and it has been critical. Our engagement with the Iraqi judiciary has been essential. I think really for me it's one of the key aspects that the team has managed to move forward as dynamically as it has done. I must pay my thanks to the Chief Justice, but all the judges of Iraq that we've dealt with have given meaningful contributions to allow us together, UNITAD together with the government of Iraq, to meet the requirements of justice. An example is that in Mosul, we've had quite extensive discussions with the counter-terrorism court in Kaka'i. We've gathered thousands of pages of material pertaining to 37 case files. Further volumes of evidence are also being digitized, and this will be an advantage and an asset to UNITAD, and also it is of mutual benefit to the Iraqi investigative judges that they can actually access the material that they have once it is digitized. Similarly, in relation to Camp Spiker and the awful massacre of mostly Shia cadets at Tikrit Air Force Academy, we've had unbelievable support from the investigative commission, the National Investigative Commission that was set up by the Republic of Iraq to look into that. And I'll come back to that a little bit later of how we've managed to work together and build cases. Following the unanimous renewal of the mandate in September, I have also reached out and tried to ensure even closer communication and understanding with the government of Iraq. I'm delighted to say that after the renewal, the Prime Minister's office has set up a new national coordinating committee which sits in his office. It's a new composition. It also includes a representative of the Kurdish regional government, and I think the government of Iraq is to be applauded for that foresight as well. The mandate repeatedly talks about the sovereignty of Iraq and the territorial integrity of Iraq, and it's important that we have representatives from the whole territory of Iraq to make sure that we speak and work with one voice as effectively as possible. I met this new committee on the 4th of November in Baghdad, and I will have another meeting with this new coordinating committee on my return on the 10th of November. Recruitment goes apace. We have completed a competitive recruitment process in accordance with UN rules. We have identified candidates for the posts for the Iraqi candidates, and now we're at the stage at a working group level of mutual consultations with the government of Iraq to make sure that the Iraqi experts that we recruit have the confidence of the government of Iraq, and again we work in concert together as far as possible. This unity of purpose, this collaboration and cooperation on logistics, support and support for the investigations has been mirrored by the cooperation and assistance given by the President and the Prime Minister of the Kurdish regional government. And in the same way, I can only describe their support as exemplary. It's extremely positive. They've also set up an intergovernmental task force. and that intergovernmental task force has been created so that hopefully we can ensure effective transmission of requests from the investigative team and an effective receipt of information as we try to ensure accountability. A program of technical assistance has also been pursued. The mandate, of course, repeatedly emphasizes that we are required to share knowledge with the Iraqi members of the team who work on an equal footing with us, but also to share technical knowledge and enhance some capacities. We've done that by a number of measures, not only by exhumations and the identification of victims, but also with other trainings and assistance, whether it's drones or 3D laser scanners or rapid DNA machines. We've had training for all of these. We have an important aspect coming up. We've received funding from the European Union, and we hope to, together with the government of Iraq, to create a digitization program that allows Iraq to have a digitized version of their records and information that are relevant to Daesh crimes, and also it will allow UNITAD to harvest those and to build cases in accordance with international standards. In my last report, I intimated that imminently UNITAD would be feeding into domestic courts. We have done that and been able, I'm glad to report, in relation to Finland. We received a request from Finland. They had a case relating to the Camp Speicher massacre. It was before the Court of Appeals, and with the full support, with the full knowledge and real meaningful assistance of the Iraqi authorities, particularly the judiciary, we managed that 8 witnesses gave evidence from the UNITAD headquarters in Baghdad straight into the Court of Appeal in Turku, Finland, in complete accordance with international standards, not only prosecution witnesses, also defense witnesses. And it's a very real credit to my brothers and sisters in Iraq and in the government that it even extended to transferring people from custody to the UNITAD headquarters. And the authorities in Finland have formally expressed their thanks to the government of Iraq for that facilitation. Through this engagement, UNITAD has demonstrated its ability and its willingness to respond to a requirement in the mandate to feed into courts in Iraq or those of third states. We are currently in receipt of 3 further formal requests from states to feed into domestic prosecutions in relation to Daesh crimes that they are conducting, and we have received also an assortment of additional inquiries from other states who believe that with the assistance of government of Iraq that we may be able to move forward. Over the last 6 months, we've also received commitments of support from Australia, Germany, Finland, France, United States of America, the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates, the Philippines, Sweden, and Uganda, and I think and Denmark. And again, I thank that contribution. Without the assistance, both of GPP, government-provided personnel, contributions to the trust fund, the operational activities of UNITAD would be severely circumscribed. So, Madam President, the last 6 months has been characterized, in my view, of a real move forward from startup to real operations. It's assisted in building case files. We fed into third country courts. We are refocusing our commitment to move ever closer our communications with the government of Iraq while maintaining the independence of our investigations, which of course is absolutely essential. I'm profoundly grateful, and I must go on record to say this, I'm profoundly grateful for the support not only from the government of Iraq, but the support and the trust that we're fostering and that we've been so generously given by survivors. And I'm pleased that the Council today, at the initiative of the United Kingdom, so thank you, Madam President, will have the opportunity to hear from a survivor, Kaka'i, who's on the screen at the moment. And I would humbly suggest that this precedent is a very good one. and I hope that in future briefings, with the leave of the Council, other survivors of other communities in Iraq will also have a chance and have the honour to speak to the Council for a few moments. I'm most grateful.
I thank the Special Advisor for his briefing.